Hello, everybody. My name is Anuj Ruther. You may recognize me from Student Showcase A. I'm going to be moderating for the production panel today with SGDA. And to get that started, let's start with introducing our producers. Lily, you can go first.
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Lila Redondo. I've been in the industry for 8 years or around that time. I have experience producing titles from consoles, computer, PC, browser, even casino games. I lead teams, small teams to big teams from countries all over the world. I'm currently working at Raven Software as an associate producer, managing the gameplay engineering, AI, UI, UX teams, and I'm also the managing producer for one of the campaign missions in the latest Call of Duty.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We just had the engineering panel recently, too. Mariah, you can go next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mariah Morris. Right now I'm an associate producer at Naughty Dog. I've been in the industry for almost 10 years now, getting very close. I've worked in mobile and of course in AAA as well. I've also done some design work for a couple of major studios as well, like game writing and narrative design. And I am looking forward to the panel today. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Yesenia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yesenia Cisneros, and I am the lead producer at Brassline Entertainment. My pronouns are she and her. I have been in the industry for about 14 years now and have worked on various AAA titles, mobile titles, and starting from like Batman Arkham City, Minecraft, Pokemon, and now at Brassline working on an unannounced title, which is we're super excited once we're ready to announce more information. And so I've had the experience managing like very large teams, small teams, and also like gameplay. And so, yeah, here I am today.
Awesome. Thank you all for coming to speak with us. This is going to be really fun. Let's get started with the questions. The first question is, how would you define your role as a producer? What do you do on a day-to-day basis? So anybody can start us off.
I can start if you want.
Sure.
So I believe the day-to-day basis is pretty different. Each day is really different. What it usually consists, at least on my by me, sorry, at least for me, is to I start the day by reviewing my emails just to see if there are any changes, any updates, if there are any action items that I should take from those emails. After that, I have a list of the things that I want to accomplish for that day. They could vary depending on the day. And the days also, I receive questions from the team. You need to put up fires. That's why it's so different from day to day, at least in my experience. But basically, it's just start the day by reviewing your emails. You try to do the things that you want to do for that day. You help the team, you unblock the team, and you carry on day to day.
Awesome.
I can jump in next, if that's all good. So the way I define my role as a producer is basically the building and maintaining of project infrastructure. So like the pathways in which like content moves from department to department, or like up the ladder to directors, or like, down to the art levels. Basically, my day-to-day involves obviously structuring and maintaining those pipelines, figuring out what needs to be reviewed and when by who, what the deadline is. And then beyond that, it's like collaborating with department heads, just making sure that they have everything that they need, going to the directors, making sure that they have everything they need, to kind of playing both camps basically throughout the day. And like Lily was saying, like it changes day to day. And depending on the phase of the project, if we're really early on in the project, it's going to look way different in the middle of the project versus the end of the project when we're trying to wrap things up. And also obviously like note taking, all the fun stuff that happens in between on the day to day. Yep, that's well, there's more to it, but
Oh yeah, there's like so much to our roles.
Yeah.
So like to add to, like, I think Lily and Mariah, you do a great job description of like what a producer does. And like, I will say the same thing, but I would like to add to it. I feel like as a producer, we wear many different hats. We have to be kind of like the conductor, where we're making sure the train is constantly moving to get features moving along and removing any roadblocks. We also play a role of like cheerleader and make sure that the team is constantly have morale up, because you have to keep the team going, even when like you're coming across really tight deadlines as well too, because you have to kind of keep that team morale going and make sure that like something that I really focus on my team is to make sure that we're always leading with empathy. And that's a very important thing in terms of like when you're coming to game development. And then it's just also making sure, to their point, is like the pipeline, making sure everyone's working and communicating to each other. So it's a lot of cat herding as well too. And so I think producers wear a lot of different hats, and also depending on like what role you're in, like whether you're like an associate producer, like producer, senior producer, like to lead producer. So right, like my role has changed quite drastically over the past few years. Now I'm at a director level. And so for me, my day-to-day is a lot of meetings and like talking to like other directors and all the other leads, and talking to my team, and kind of like helping manage the production team in terms of like setting up our initial infrastructure, what our production pipeline and process looks like, but also making sure that my team has the autonomy to do what they need to do, because I fully believe in trusting my experts, and it's like I hire them for a reason, so they should be able to do their job. And also, it's to their point, it's a lot of emails, it's a lot of like catching up with people, like, hey, did you do this thing? Like, hey, did you talk to this person about this? So it's just a lot of communication every day, and no one day is the same, to Lily and Mariah's point.
Definitely. I think that idea of autonomy is really important, like kind of taking that and being sure that you understand that we have even like within the student games, we have a lot of like change in the direction. So I imagine that day to day is it's an ever changing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's like, I'm sure they have done this experience as well too, where you're thinking you're going in this direction, then all of a sudden it's like, no, we have to pivot to this way. And as part of production, it's our job to make sure like we're pivoting the entire team all together. We're making sure everyone is in alignment, and also like constantly thinking about scope and making sure it's at quality, and or reducing scope, and like it's just a lot of moving pieces. So production kind of keep it together.
Yeah. And with that, I have to ask, what is your favorite part of being a producer?
I love helping people. I've always wanted to be a producer because I love collaborating with different teams and disciplines and working towards a main tangible goal. Like that is my favorite part, because I'm a people person. So I love problem solving for everyone.
Right.
Do you want to go next, Lily, or should I? I'll just
it's
be in the
fine.
middle.
You
Okay,
can-
yeah, sure. Going off of what Yesenia said, like collaborating is like one of the most rewarding parts about being a producer. For me personally, since I work with art teams, I get the perspective of like watching sections of a project go from alpha to beta to gold and seeing the growth. Because sometimes like when you're like heads down with your blinders on, you don't necessarily see like just how amazing this is. And like part of my job is like when we get really good feedback from directors, and be like, hey, they really like this. Like, here's a little clip. They're just like, oh, it looks amazing. And like that aspect
like shed
of it.
a tear.
Yes, it's just like, and then when final sign off comes around, it's just like, yes, victory. Like it feels good for everyone. And like when everyone's happy, like I'm happy. And like that's like my favorite part of my job.
I agree with both of you, but I believe that what I like the most is the fact that you need to organize everything. For me, having the opportunity to see what we need to do, organize it in a way that is easier for everyone, like Yesenia was saying, the way you collaborate with the team and make it easier for everyone to understand what we need to do and all of that. I enjoy that so much. So yeah, I think I go with organization.
It sounds really fulfilling to be able to just like see that come together and see like all the pieces fall into place. Like, that sounds really fun. I guess that this is a question a lot for Yesenia, because you recently moved on to like a directorial role in a way. But what is the difference, or what are the differences between junior and senior roles in production? And Lily and Mariah, if you have any insights, you could also jump in.
That's a really good question, because first off, there is no one size fits all kind of situation, because so I've worked at indie studios, I've worked at large corporations, and I think it really depends on where it has a lot of factors, what your role is, because in my experience, I also feel like associate producer is the one that has like so many gaps in terms of like ladders of like, you're an entry-level associate producer, you're a junior producer, you're a mid-level associate producer, and then senior associate producer, and then you're a producer. And but it varies at every studio because it depends on how large the team is, how what their infrastructure is like, and how well they're set up. So with that being said, that's my caveat of like, it depends on what studio you're at, what team you're working on, what discipline, because sometimes you're in charge of an entire project as an associate producer, or sometimes they're like, you're just an associate producer for the art department or for the design department, you know, so there's a lot of different variables that go into it. That being said, I feel like for my team that there's a lot of, there's differences between the junior and senior roles. Like the way I look at it in my experience overall, minus like everything else, I feel like usually associate producers do a lot of the day-to-day tracking. It's like making sure people are updating their tasks, running stand-ups, and then eventually, and then it morphs into like their associate producers are more like, here's the problem, I'm gonna bring the problems to you. Like more junior roles are like, here's the problem, and then you move into senior roles where it becomes more of a, here's the problem, this is how we fix it. And then another level of that seniority in production is like, I have discovered all these things and improvements we can make to our process. So that like, that's how I look at it in terms of like progression in your career. Cause it's like, it's one of those things that it just takes time. And I know when I first started, it took me some time too, because I was the person like, I just execute in my junior role. That's all I was doing. And then finally you get to a point where you're like, oh, I'm good at this. Now I'm going to start figuring out how to come with solutions. And then your mind just shifts. And it's one of those things that the longer you're in production, the more you add to your toolbox, essentially. And so that's how your role changes from junior to senior. That's my take. I would love to hear Lily and Mariah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I believe that the more senior positions have more experience. So for example, if they encounter an issue in their day-to-day basis or whatever, they probably already had that issue happen before. So they have the experience to back them up and to fix or solve whatever is happening at that point. And they also have experience with the tools. So it will be easier for them to do things faster because they already know what to expect and what tool to use in order to complete the task. So I believe that is the difference. Also a junior position, it's probably doesn't have that experience yet, so doesn't mean this is not a bad thing, but it's not as fast as a senior producer might be.
Yeah, I would second all of that. And the way I look at it is in terms of like what you're responsible for, you know, as a production coordinator or as like a junior producer is much smaller. So like you're focusing on the day-to-day, the week to week, and then at an associate level, you're probably looking, I mean, again, this is like you said, it was like there's a huge gap. Yeah. Like the skill like threshold for associate producers across the industry is just like exponentially large.
Yeah.
But as you get to that level, yeah, believe me,
it can be frustrating.
Oh my gosh, you have no, I'm sure you have every idea. So like when you get to that like range, you're thinking about like months, right? And then as you get to the producer level, you're thinking of like, you know, the project at a much higher level, and like the scope of your responsibility grows and grows and grows. So it's like the same like skill fundamentals that you learn as at an entry level basically just grow and grow and grow. And the more you grow and the more you learn, like the higher perspective that you have, like makes you a better producer, because like you like Lily said, you know what to look for, and like you have like institutional knowledge. If you've been at a studio for a while, it's like, oh, I've seen this before, you know, like we tried this 3 months ago. And like that will like retaining that information will help you like build better processes into the future. And I think that's what helps you kind of like go up the ladder, so to speak.
Definitely. That makes a lot of sense. Kind of you learn as you go in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I usually see like producers and more like at more senior levels, they start to tend to become more of, instead of only the daily execution of like making sure tasks are updated, doing stand-ups, unblocking like day-to-day stuff. They start the more senior you become, the more impact you have on the overall schedule, where you're actually like building out, let's say, a roadmap for a milestone period, or you're building out a roadmap for all the features, et cetera. So definitely like gets more complex as you go to, you know, that higher progression level.
It's almost like a game in and of itself.
Yeah, pretty much. Like now at my level, it's like I have to make sure I look at like what our overall timeline is, and then also then scope it down and like, okay, based on that timeline, here's what we're delivering for this timeline. And then it's like I go further, and then it's like, and I give it to my team. I'm like, okay, they're now like they're in charge of like making sure that we're accomplishing these features within a certain timeline.
Awesome, cool. Thank you so much. With that, we can move on to our second question, which is, well, second on the button. If you've worked on a project with more than one producer, how do you collaborate with other producers who are all working on fundamentally the same thing?
I can start. So I think it depends. For example, if you're working on a work for hire, and which usually have not as no, that's not the correct way to say it. If you're working on a work for hire environment and you have a project where you have 2 producers on it or whatever amount of producers, I believe the best way to start a project is to divide the work. Like, you know, especially if you do it in writing, that will be better to know exactly what is the responsibility for each producer. That way you don't have like duplicates of the work. You can both work the amount that you need to be working on, if that makes sense. When you're working on a AAA or bigger studios, they usually have a producer for each department or that is in charge on some sections. So they already have a pipeline established of what you need to do. So it's a little bit easier to track, but nonetheless, what I believe the best thing when producers, more than one producer is working on a project, is communication, because you're going to be communicating with all the producers that are there, depending on their responsibilities. But yeah, sorry. So
Yeah,
basically that's it.
Yeah, I was, if you don't mind me like jumping off of that, like that's a huge part of like how we like basically we get a body of work, and it's either, so like my team, I have myself, I have a producer, and then I have some production coordinators that support. So any body of work that we get, we like pick it apart, you know, and just be like, okay, figure out what the tasks are, figure out who's responsible for these tasks, document that information somewhere, because we're going to forget at some point, like once we go heads down. But all those things are based on bandwidth. It's based on urgency. It's based on like, again, like that institutional knowledge. Like, is this something that you can do very quickly because we've done it before? And then divvy up the work, spread it out, do it. And then, so that's how we start. And then once we start working, what my team likes to do is have this like mind meld strategy where like our communication, our channels of communication are like perfectly transparent. It's like we know everything that's going on just because the project is so big, the teams are so big. Like if something happens, so if I'm responsible for something, and sole ownership is like another part, like we all own like one section of this work. So if like something happens in like someone else's meeting or someone else's, you know, breakout discussion, they're like, hey, this is what Mariah's tracking, then that information can get back to me. And then I can like be a part of the conversation if I need to. And basically that kind of just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling until the work is done. And it works, it's magic. It's like, then you have a game. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to what they said, because it's essentially when you're working with multiple producers, you have to just communicate to each other, and like knowing who's responsible for what, like whether it's responsible for a feature or for a strike team or department, having regular meetings and syncs with your production team works really well, because that gives you a chance to kind of check in, be like, hey, what's everyone working on? Like, and then you kind of hear which each team's working on, so you can kind of co-collaborate, and also make sure that the production team is in alignment, because having that open communication that allows you to act more quickly to see like, oh, there's a dependency issue on this team and versus the other team. And so production knows ahead of time. And so on my team, we always have weekly production meetings. We have a production channel just for ourselves where we can chat and openly discuss all the things, so we know what's happening at all times. And then of course, for me, I have one-on-ones with all of my direct reports. And so I know at that level, like what's happening on them. So if there's something that I hear from one of my producers that could impact the other team, I just make sure that they're talking to each other.
Right.
And then from another level is that when I'm having directors meetings or leads meeting or anything like that, if I find information, the first thing I do is like even if it's not solidified, I'm a very transparent person. So I let my production team know immediately, like, this is what's happening. Nothing's set in stone yet, but I want to give you visibility because this could impact what you're doing in terms of planning and scheduling. Because I've been on the opposite end of things in my previous times where information comes down from the top down, but I don't know until the very end. And it's like, I wish someone told me this like months ago because I wouldn't have had my team work on this, or, et cetera. And I know it ends up becoming like business politics, but I'd rather not do that. So I'm just very transparent with my team.
Absolutely. Kind of like producers working together to produce themselves as a whole.
Yeah, pretty much. Oops, I moved my screen. It is not an earthquake.
No. Awesome. Anybody else have anything that they want to add? In that case, I'd like to ask, what should students expect going into game production that's different from what they would do in university? And how would they keep up with the changes?
That's a good question, because I went to university, and for me, it was one of those things like I got a bachelor's degree, and at that time I was already working in the industry and I was already a producer. But for me, I wanted the degree just for myself. I didn't actually need it. And I'm going to be a little controversial, but I didn't feel like my bachelor's degree actually benefited me towards my production job. I feel like experience works better in terms of that rather than education. Like, education will teach you some basic things where it's like, oh, you know how to talk to people, you know how to write and communicate effectively, things like that. But I feel like coming out of school, you could get into game production. You'll be able to apply some skills that you probably learned from like business school, because that's what I got. I have a business degree. So some things I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But I already knew how to do that. I feel like other courses are probably more like, if you were to take a project management course, that like, it's not a one-to-one, but it gives you some basic knowledge of how like project management works. And then there's also like Scrum certification that helps build your knowledge base of like how software development works. Because there's nothing out there that I know of, at least. If there is, please let me know. But I don't think there's anything out there that actually teaches you how to be a producer in game development. It's just like a lot of one-off courses that people do online that you can take that I feel like are more beneficial. And so that's the only caveat of like, if you were to go and try to get into the job like right after school, there might be some things that you won't really know. And that's where I encourage people to like take Scrum certifications, look for other people that are doing actual game production courses so you can learn. Get some books on like Scrum methodology just to learn Scrum and Agile practices, learn project management, like just learning all these different pieces of like how other industries do it kind of helps build that foundation for being a producer. And also like getting and learning how game development works. Like I love going to game dev industry.biz. I think that's the website, but there's like a lot of good articles there for people coming out of school to learn. And then if you're lucky, you can find someone with GDC password and get into the GDC vault. There's a lot of good seminars there that people have done. And I feel like you'll gain a lot from that more. And some of them are free also, because if they were in the advocacy track, you can go into the vault there. Hopefully that answers your question. I know that was like a long-winded answer.
No, that was great. That was really good advice.
Yeah, I want to actually second that 100%, because I have a game design degree that I got. I went to trade school, and what it really did, I mean, it taught me every aspect of like game development. So I learned a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and everything I learned about production was like in between those things.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like yeah, I made a mobile game for my senior project, and like at that point I realized, okay, I want to be a producer, but like it wasn't like I was also engineering on that project. I was also, doing all the like the uni level things, but like production was never really like a focus. And I feel like, yeah, experience, like the experience that I had at school, like that was probably more beneficial to me than like actually taking any of the coursework. And I think there's plenty of people like out there online in these communities that are making games that could probably use your help if like you know a thing or two about production, and that is experience, and that's like that can go on your resume. And if I'm a hiring manager, like it's like, oh well, they produced a game. Like that's all you really need to do. But like gaining your skills, like yeah, you can read about it. You can talk to people. That's another great way to learn. But it's not really going to come normally or naturally from coursework, because I feel like that's all theoretical.
Yeah.
It's like it's so much different when you're actually like in the field working. It's like, oh, school didn't prepare me for this at all.
Right. It's such a different environment compared
Yeah.
to what you do in school, where everything's kind of like on a set schedule.
Yeah. So 100% agree with you, Yesenia.
I agree with them as well. So it was not
I'm glad we all have like the same experience right here.
I was going to say, this is not a hot take. I think we all agree. I'm sorry, but yeah, I believe that things that you can learn at school that are important for to work as a producer in the industry is pretty much to understand the pipeline. That is something that is really helpful, especially when you're starting. If you don't have any other experience, it's really important to at least know how to, even if you don't create the games from start to finish, what the structure is to do that. But I do believe that there is not a course right now, at least to my knowledge, that exists that prepares you to be a producer, like both of you were saying. You basically need to rely on the experience that you get along the way, on the knowledge that you got from going to school. It could be business school, or it could be a game. I was actually I studied animation and digital art, and I was in a 3D modeler before becoming a producer. And it doesn't mean that my experience as a 3D artist was to waste, because it was really helpful for me to understand what the 3D artists are going to be needing. So there's not a path, like a straight path for how to become a producer. But definitely the most important thing is the experience that you get. The soft skills, like Yesenia was saying, communication, all of those are really important, and to understand the pipeline.
Yeah, I mean, I started as a tester, so.
I did too. Yeah. I was also a 3D artist.
Nice.
So I've done the whole spiel.
Definitely. I think that like specific discipline majors are really good for understanding that specific discipline, what they need. But at the same time, with production, like it's so
we are a unicorn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I'm applying to postgrad positions, it's like really hard to find specifically for production stuff. Maybe there should be more.
Yeah, that's why, like for me, I like to use at Brassline, we work really hard on making sure that we use inclusive language when it comes to our job postings. And on the production side, like I know how hard it is to get a job in production, especially as an associate producer. So I try to make sure that I don't gatekeep those roles where it's like if someone doesn't have, actual production experience, but they have equivalent experience, I take them as well too. And I think more companies should do that, because I feel like we are excluding such a large group of people that could really do the job if you just gave them a chance. Because if I wouldn't be here today, if I wasn't given the chance and had to push my way to it.
Oh, if I can add to what Yesenia was saying, because what she said is really important. And I am from Mexico. I actually moved to the States like 2 years ago. And it is not, even though I have a lot of experience, and there's people that are amazing producers that find it hard to come to the States or to come to big companies, because, for example, at least in Mexico, there are not big studios. So you are competing with people that already work at bigger studios.
Yeah.
So, and you are just leaving them behind because they don't have that experience, even though they are amazing. So I believe that what Yesenia is saying, it's completely true. And there should be more opportunities as well. I'm sorry, I know that was not the question, but
this is
like
really
went
important
that way.
conversation.
Yeah, no,
this is exactly what we need.
Yeah, no, for sure. I could write a book about my experience trying to find work as an AP in the industry. Just because, going a little bit about like the language that they use. Like I've seen AP roles that sound ridiculous. Like It's just like you need 7 years of
7 years,
experience.
or I'm like,
yeah, something.
oh, so you want a
crazy.
producer?
Yes,
Why is the
like,
associate there?
exactly. Like
Yep.
there's like the high expectations, and then there's like the low end expectations, and there's this weird ambiguous middle area. So like as someone who like comes to this studio looking for a job, you're just like, where do I fit here?
That's
and like
why I feel like associate producers, back to my original point, like there's so many levels, because it's like in production, you have associate producer, it's like this large of a range. And it's like, you can have entry level or 7 years. And it's just like, okay.
I know it's really overwhelming. And I was fortunate not to be in the market for too long before it like drove me bananas. But there's a lot to be said about the language that that recruiting and other hiring managers use when they talk about these positions, because like Lily was saying, like there are so many amazing people that have production skills that look at a listing and see all these words that they don't think that they apply to them, so they're like, this one's too advanced for me, and they just like move on to the next one. And the reality of the job is like, it's actually quite simple. It's like you actually already have all these skills. The advice that I like to give is like, when you look at a job and you read the requirements, you just go down the list one by one and just like read the requirements. Like they're asking for experience with this kind of game, and then you look at your experience and then go check, and then you go to the next one and then you read through and it's like, oh, like they're asking for like you need collaboration skills, and then you're just like, okay, when have I collaborated? And you figure it out and write check. And then once you complete that, usually you have like check, and you're like, all right, great, I have everything, and then you feel more confident about applying. And that's the way I get around like all the scary language that I see in applying. But I think overall that we could like tone it down, make it more inclusive, and like more globally understood even, because they like to use like game dev lingo and all the stuff that you have to be there to know, and like
to scare you, deter you.
Yeah, it's like a language barrier almost for people that are coming into the industry.
That actually segues really well into our next question, which is what tools should game producers or students who want to become game producers get accustomed to? Tools, and also with this conversation, terms as well. After this, we'll start moving into audience questions. So yeah, what tools and terms should student game producers get familiar with before applying?
This is old school, but it works. Excel. Get really used to spreadsheets. I was actually just having this conversation with someone not too long ago, because I feel like there's no software out there for producers that gives us everything we want, whether it's Jira or like, Azure DevOps or Handsoft or any other project management software. There's nothing. I wish that there's one software that kind of gives hodgepodge of all these different softwares and put it into one and gives me everything I need, because it doesn't exist. We usually, I'm sure Mariah and Lily can attest to this, they probably use multiple different softwares and tools in order to do their job, because there's nothing that offers us our solution. So if for new people coming to the industry, like learn spreadsheets, learn pivot tables, they work wonders. I know this sounds stupid, but learn how to do like filters. If you're not familiar with Excel, like doing tables, learning how to filter those and sort it, do pivot tables, formulas, because that'll also help you like keep track of things if you wanted to do a work back schedule, or if you wanted to do like a burn down chart to see like how people's velocity. And what I mean by that is like how fast are people working in a given sprint. If you work off sprints, like how fast people can finish the work. Another one is, as I mentioned, you can learn Jira, because that's a very common one in the industry where everyone uses for task tracking every day, and it has sprints. So that's a good one to learn in terms of like Agile and Scrum. I feel like those are the two biggest ones for me, because I despise Handsoft and I despise any other like project management software, because I don't use them.
I second what Yesenia said. Excel is the best thing. You're going to be using it a lot. With this, I don't mean that you need to 100% know how to use Excel, but you at least need to know what Yesenia was mentioning. Another thing, Jira for tracking, it depends of what studio you're working on, but usually you will be using Jira and Confluence. Confluence, you will be using it for documentation stuff, and Jira for tracking, like Shani was saying, the sprints, for tracking the tasks that everybody is going to be doing and when is everybody going to be working on those. These are the three ones that I believe are the most important ones. But if you already know one of this, if you need to jump to a similar one, it's going to be easier. So if for example, if you're not going, I don't know, if you're going to work with Asana, which is an organization tool, you already have the experience and you can use it. And or Trello, which is like a Kanban board.
Artists love Trello.
Yeah. It depends on the studio, but sorry, once again, Excel, Jira, and Confluence.
Yeah, I really don't have anything to add to that. That's basically my repertoire. Some kind of
PowerPoint
sheet.
also.
Yeah.
I've never used
presentation.
Presentation software. Like that's another like category of, stuff that we use. We have like this kind of like whiteboard thing where we can just like put sticky notes and like kind of move things around. We use them for like retrospectives and stuff. But yeah.
Oh, are you talking about Miro?
Yes, Miro.
Yeah, Miro's good.
Obsessed.
We use it. I love it. Yeah.
It's gaining a lot of popularity lately, right? Miro, everyone is using it. At least in the last studios that I have working on, they've been using Miro.
Yeah, I use it to create my roadmaps. It's great. Yeah. Because it's like if we were in an office, I would have it like on the board, on the wall, like everywhere. But I use it as a virtual whiteboard that's just there. So yeah, I've created a roadmap. It's so pretty.
And it's infinite. It just goes on forever.
Yep.
Which is dangerous, but fun.
Yeah.
And just like visually pleasing. I think that's like a huge like reason why it works so well. It's because it's like, I love Excel. I love like sheet software, but like it's so much easier on the eyes. And like one of the things I really like about production is just like you can use these tools in whatever way you want, whatever way like makes the most sense to you, makes the most sense for your team. So that's all. These are super great, super cool.
Like I think that mural is like a new term that I don't think I've ever heard of, but it sounds really useful.
Yeah, I think it's come out at least within the last 3 years, because I know I was using it last year, and then I think it was around for a year, so I'm assuming 3 years at least.
It's recent.
It's very new.
Yeah.
That's for sure. For our audience question, we actually have an audience question that works really well with one of the questions we sent earlier, and that would be, how might someone coming right out of college tailor their resume or portfolio for a production role?
I think Mariah was it was Lily. Lily, you were having a good point about, I remember, Mariah, you were talking about the resumes, right? Okay, sorry. I'm like, wait, someone was talking about it.
Yeah, it's totally fine. But if either one of you want to jump in on that, I'd love to hear your take. Oh no, but I unless
nothing
here.
I didn't know if you wanted to add more to it.
No, I don't think so. I think it's pretty straightforward, but I'd love to hear your take on it.
I do the same thing when I would apply for jobs. I would also look at like the qualifications that someone has in their job posting and kind of go to and be like, okay, go kind of pull a bullet list of like, this is their job qualification. Then like, I like to write, I like to have a Word doc, and I like to take their qualifications, make it bullet points. And then I write to myself, like, how do I qualify for this role? And so usually I start off with like a summary and I answer each question. And then from there, that's when I'm like, okay, now I'm going to like resumeify it. I made that word up just now, but where I make it into like more bullet points and like shorter structured sentences. So that's kind of how I tailor my resume. And then also for me, like, I like when I'm looking at resumes, I look for people who have organizational skills, who have some kind of project management or project coordinator skills where they've managed something from beginning to end. I've even looked at customer service experience, because when I first started, I had a lot of customer service experience. And I feel like that's very useful also because it shows that you know how to talk to people. And I did collections at one point, so I can handle really difficult situations. So I look for that. I look for anything where you had to manage something essentially. And also the big one for me is like where it shows that you work across teams, because it shows that you are able to work with multiple people. You also know what it's like to work with the team. Yeah, that's one way to do it, and just showing that off really helps a lot.
I want to add that if you want to include a portfolio, which is harder for producers, I believe at some point, especially when you're starting, a portfolio should include the projects that you work on and what you did on that project. So, for example, you can mention, I work on this video game, whatever the name is. I manage from concept to market, whatever team. You explain what you do, what you did with that project, and that way you can have a portfolio of the games that you played. You can use PowerPoint or whichever is easier for you, but that is a way for you to showcase your portfolio of video games that you have worked on. If you are just coming up from school, the projects that you did at school and what your role was in those projects at school could also be helpful for the person that is reviewing your portfolio to notice that you are actually working towards those skills that you're going to be needing. So that's how I will manage the portfolio. For the resume, I agree with Mariah and Yesenia. The only thing that I could add is that if you already know what role you want to be working on, tailor your resume to go towards that role. So if you want to be a producer, you can of course include the other skills that you have. You have 3D art skills, you have engineering skills, but try to emphasize what you have right now, that what you work on right now that is relevant to the position. That is also something really helpful.
I like the portfolio idea. I've actually never used it, so I think that's pretty cool.
Oh, I have a portfolio, and that's also for me because I like to see all the games that I have worked on. So it's a showcase for me that I can share.
Yeah. I actually just had this conversation about whether or not a producer or somebody applying for a production role can benefit from having a portfolio. And I've kind of gone back and forth on this because, like, if I were to literally showcase my work, I couldn't because it's all locked under an NDA. Like, I can't just be showing everybody what my workflows look like. And like, because like I made this, but it's just like, you can't see that. So like, I just feel like a portfolio, like it just doesn't land the same way it might for a designer or an artist or something, you know, that has like tangible like evidence of the things that they worked on. I think it's a great like thing to have, like Lily was saying, is like, oh, these are all the games that I've worked on. And like, if I made myself a portfolio, it would look amazing. There'd just be so many things and so many responsibilities. But like, because I've also applied for design roles, so I do have a portfolio, but it's like not production related specifically. And I think that like your portfolio should supplement your resume from like, this is like my personal thing. So like, let's say I did have like, well, I mean, well, like my resume, for example, like if I worked on like a project and I listed all the things I did on that project, like how would that be so different than the portfolio? The portfolio is just like, it's like pretty. It's like, oh, it looks nice. And it's like very presentable. But like, I don't necessarily think that it's like mandatory to have one. It's nice, you know, it's like, or like you just, even just like a general website for yourself can have both of those things at the same time. But I wouldn't want anyone to think that they have to have a portfolio. I think the skills and the experience on your resume is really all you need, because then you yourself are a testament to your skills. Like if you get it in the interview, you just like, you're super knowledgeable, you know exactly what you want to do, you know exactly what your skills are, and you're confident, like it's a done deal at that point.
I definitely include like game titles I've worked on my resume. And so that's another thing, like to Lily's point, like a portfolio, if you don't want to do that, you can just like list the projects that you've managed on your resume or in your cover letter. And that also helps, where it's like, I managed a team of 10 doing this. Like that's okay to include in your resume, even if you don't have like professional experience, just talking about that as well too. So that's another advice to tailor your resume for production.
I agree, and by all means, please don't feel pressure to create a portfolio. That is something that
You're fine, Lily. You're fine.
No, I'm just saying, because that is true. If you don't want to showcase what you have done, or you can't, don't feel pressure to have something, because it might just damage what you have. If, for example, all you can show is NDA project for 10, it will not help you, because for me it's just noise. that is
Yeah.
probably not helping. But if you have something to show, especially out of school, because you have so many projects, consider having a portfolio. It's a fun thing to do for yourself and a fun thing to, and an interesting point for to see for someone that is going to evaluate you as a possible employee.
Definitely, that's really helpful. Like having like portfolio, I've seen for a lot of other positions, but like for a producer, it's like a question of what would you do? But that's really good advice all around. Well, for next question, I'd like to ask what. Oh, let me double check that for audience questions. Any tips for doing your own production for your own games? Kind of like self-production in a way.
Yes. If you're working on your own game, I believe that the first thing, of course, you probably already have a game design document for it. So now that you have all the information, you can start dividing what you're going to be needing. So for example, you can go and start, I'm going to be needing this as it's in 3D, I don't know. You're going to be needing these assets, I'm going to be needing these features, I'm going to be needing blah, blah, blah. And you can start putting time into them on what you believe could take you to do all that list. And at the end of that, of course, it will take more than that, but you will know exactly how much time that will take, or an approximate time. So you can work with that and start organizing what needs to happen first, what needs to happen after, what needs to happen at the end. And you can start creating a timeline for yourself. And that is helpful because if you don't have a timeline for yourself, you're probably going to be creating an asset. I'm sorry, I'm talking about assets. That's the first example. But you're going to be creating a pen or something, and you're going to be thinking, oh, I can do it better. I can do it better. I can do it better. And then you spend a month on creating a pen that is going to be in the background. So you need when you are producing for yourself, you can, like I said, create a timeline. You can create milestones for yourself to see how much you have advanced on your project. And so definitely is something that I encourage anyone that is creating their own games to see how much timeline, to see how many, because that's also a thing. You believe your game is so simple, but when you start writing how many features you're going to be doing, you discover that this is not going to take me a month. This is going to take me 2 years or so. Or I'm going to be needing a team. I don't know how to do audio. How much do I need to pay? And you can start creating a budget of how much you're going to be paying your colleagues, or you can invite people that are going to work for free. I don't know. But you are going to discover much about your game than just the GDD that you're creating.
I gotta love scope creep. Once it starts going, you're just like, oh man, I want to add 2 pens, and you don't think of duplicating the first pen. It's like, no, I can't have 2 identical pens. And like like Lily was saying, like having that like backlog, so to speak, of like the things that you need to do, the things that you need to accomplish and how long they're going to take, is really going to help you like fully understand and have like an idea of how long these things are going to take, because they are going to take a while, especially if you're doing it by yourself.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to what Lily said, because it's really like she nailed it. It's like you have to figure out a timeline yourself, time box yourself, because I know like estimation, like figuring out like how long something takes, it's hard sometimes, especially when you're doing it for the first time. You're like, I don't know how long it's going to take me to write this feature. And so time box yourself also. Like that's another way to like add estimates to your work. It's like, okay, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm only going to time box myself for 2 weeks, and that's it. That's all I'm going to give myself for this. And also in terms of software, since I know that's like not an easily accessible thing sometimes, sticky notes, they're great. Go old school and put it on your wall if you're working on a game, and like write down all the features and stick them on the wall so you visibly see it. And when you're done, you can like move it all around to like done and like, or in progress, etc. And then it actually looks nice when you're completing things. So that's a really cheap way to do it as well too, without actual software.
I think I got to see recently, like I think Dave's X Human Evolution, they had a physical board to keep track of things as they were going along with production. Like that's a physical, tangible. It's like it's a physical version of Trello or a project management software board.
Mm-hmm.
We have a couple more questions in chat. However, I think that we are slowly running out of time, so we can put those in the Discord and have a conversation afterward, if possible. But for now, let's ask the closing question of, is there any advice you'd like to share with students potentially looking to be in the field of production? And anything you'd like to advise that they should try to do, or anything that they should avoid?
I will start with never be afraid to put yourself out there. If you find something that you like, and like Mariah and Jasenia were saying in the past, and you find like you check the boxes, because you probably will do, send your resume. Worst case scenario is that you will receive a no, but you can try again in the future. And I don't know at what point they perhaps say will say no, but you will have the experience of sending that, and you will be ready for the next interview or the next thing, because you already have that experience. So don't be afraid, send your thing, try again, repeat, and yeah, pretty much never be scared of putting yourself out there.
Yeah, to add to Lily's point, also, I feel like back to our earlier conversation about inclusive language, because sometimes job descriptions out there are not great and they sometimes gatekeep, unfortunately. I think as women, and also as women of color, we tend to have this thing where it's like, if we don't hit all the check boxes, we won't apply. So for hiring managers out there, that's something to remember. So make sure you use inclusive language in your job descriptions for that reason alone. But also, to Lily's point, my advice is like, put yourself out there. If you don't hit every single qualification, still apply. Like, it is okay, because sometimes you may not hit all the qualifications, and the hiring manager may look at your thing. It's like, oh, they're actually like really close to that. You know what? I still want to talk to them. So like, and don't get discouraged. I know, especially when you're trying to get an associate producer role, those I feel like are the hardest. Do not get discouraged. Just keep applying and trying. And when the right studio that works for you, you will find it, it'll work out.
Yeah, to add to that, I would say all those things, plus like, don't be afraid to ask for help. I think like the way I got into my current position, which feeds into another piece of feedback, is keep in touch with your colleagues from school, because you never know where they're going to end up, and they just might end up at the studio that you really want to work for. And then, you know, as long as you keep those networking connections there, like you can reach out to them and be like, hey, I haven't, spoken to you, and it's like, how you doing? I was interested in this position. Do you mind if I ask you some questions? It can just be as simple as that. Additionally to that, you could get a mentor, someone that can give you feedback and
mentors are so crucial.
Yeah, my mentor saved my life. Honestly, she taught me so much about the industry that I probably would have never known on my own, mainly because I just wasn't exposed to the really great parts about it, and I think asking for help is a huge thing that everyone should do if they're unsure, or if they just want advice, because it might feel scary to reach out to someone in the industry, but there are a lot of really kind people out there that are just here, have all this information. They just want to pass on the knowledge to younger generations of people that want to get into games that it might be more difficult for them for one reason or another. So help is out there.
On that note, also the industry, it doesn't seem that it's small, but it is quite small. So don't be a jerk to anyone, because you don't know you being jerk to that person. That they remember, and so always try to be nice, always try to be diplomatic with each other, because at some point, it hasn't happened to me, but it could happen that that specific person that you were a jerk to is in that studio that you want to work on, and you know what that person is going to be saying? That person is a jerk. Don't hire him. And
Yep, and that has happened to me. Not me being the jerk, but someone that was a jerk has tried to apply, and I'm like, nope. They were an asshole to me.
Yeah. So like I said, don't be a jerk, and that's it.
That's a good advice, because yeah, to your point, our industry is large, but it's also really small, and everyone talks to each other. So we all it's more often than not, when you apply to a job, and if someone sees your name and they're like, oh, I know someone who works over there, they're going to check in on you, and then they'll find out what kind of person you are.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for all the responses. It was really good having you all. And thank you to the audience for the questions. And we will see you for the next student showcase. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.